Just on the FA Cup though, how special of a competition has it been to you during your career?
Very. I think it is to most players. Sort of having a lower league background, you grow up watching a lot of upsets and always want to be part of something like that, and you see the glamour that comes with those kind of stories. So it's something when I was young I certainly watched on, and it's great when you live the dream of being a footballer that you get to play in the competition and have a realistic chance of creating some of those memories for yourself.
Also, your debut, because I've moved now to the Exeter City League, your debut at Oxford United, I think, came at St James's Park, didn't it?
Correct, yeah.
Can you remember that game?
I remember it quite well, but really well, because it was I played a few games for Oxford off the bench, but it was as you say, my first starts. I was nervous. I was 17 at the time. I think back then it was on Setanta TV, so that in itself was a first for me as well. I just wanted to try and enjoy it as best I can, and Exeter certainly made it difficult that night. I think we ended up losing 2-0 to two Adam Stanfield goals, but it was a great experience, and one I look back on with a lot of pride. Granted, on the wrong side of the result for me at the time, but yeah.
Good stadium to make your debut at, I suppose, and the atmosphere that was created on those nights, if it was on TV and evening game as well.
Absolutely, I've mentioned it a few times. It's I think it's a really unique environment you get to play in League Two, to have such an atmosphere, and credit to the fans for making that possible.
I just want to move on to your early time at Oxford now. You played under 3 different managers there, I believe. Just pick 2 of them out, Jim Smith and Chris Wilder. First of all, Jim, how knowledgeable a manager was he, and how much advice did he give you growing up?
Going back quite a long way now. I was 16 when I broke through, and it was under Jim Smith. I'd had some good performances with the youth team and the reserves, and was lucky enough to get the call up. And I didn't actually speak too much with him at the time. I think he'd rather sort of let you experience it for yourself, maybe. But I was very aware of the guy's reputation at the club from historically his first stint at the club was one that a lot of fans remember. I think he took him to Milk Cup victory in the 80s. So I was just kind of a little bit in awe of being around guys like that. So it was a great experience to be able to just take a few things that he would say in training to other players, and I'd listen to this and take that on board.
On to Chris Wilder now. Obviously he's had incredible success with Sheffield United, now working in the Premier League. He also seems a bit of a character that you wouldn't like to upset. What was he like in the dressing room?
Again, my time with him was relatively short. He played me for a couple games, and I was lucky enough to score in one of those as well. But he was, I think it was quite early on in his managerial career, but he already had a very strong reputation for trying to take clubs up. I think been with Halifax under some quite hard circumstances at the time, and showed his credentials then, and he did the same with Oxford. But he was a man with a very strong personality, and someone I think we all looked up to, because he had a good reputation in the game, and it's incredible what he's gone on to do since. And wow, I mean, he's sitting in the top half of the Premier League. What an achievement.
You left Oxford United following a successful loan spell with their city rivals, and then joined Glenn Hoddle's academy in Jerez in Spain. What was that academy like, and how much was it help was it for you at that time of your football career?
Something I've also mentioned in the past actually is I can't credit that setup enough for giving me a chance to really try and get into football. I'd had a taster with Oxford, and it was a shame that it didn't quite work out for me there, and it provided a really good stepping stone to be able to not only showcase how you could play in front of some of the teams he played against with them, but also to learn from those guys that were there. I mean, Glenn himself, there was Nigel Spatman, Dave Besant, Graham Ricks, guys with great reputations in the game, and certainly was a place where you could really develop your understanding of the game. Maybe not in a competitive environment, because in the first few months it was you played a lot of reserve fixtures, and then they affiliated themselves with a Secunda B side, Jerez Industrial, and then we were able to translate sort of training games into competitive games allowed us to be able to sort of showcase what we were about in a competitive environment, and some of the guys have gone on to have some really remarkable careers off the back of it, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity they gave me, and that I'm still playing football now.
You mentioned some of the coaches there that you worked under. Just tell us about them, and also how much interaction did you get with Glenn Hoddle himself?
A lot. He was there a lot of the time. I think the only times he wasn't there was when he was doing some whatever punditry was on at the time. So you'd see him in the morning and then see him on doing the Champions League in the evenings. Their understanding and their knowledge of the game was fantastic. It was something that we'd never really been, certainly from my background, had never really been exposed to. I think if you maybe offered some of the lessons they gave us a little bit younger and they became more ingrained in you as you developed, that would be the holy grail of progression through the game and your understanding. But it was a tough 2 years. They made it was a very professional setup and allowed us to have some quite unique experiences.
What was it like living in Andalusia as well? And obviously you mentioned that their link up with the Spanish side, Jerez Industrial. What was it like at that time, and how much fondness do you look back on it?
Huge. I mean, I think in terms of an English player's transition into playing in a different country, it was probably as comfortable as you could get. It was a bit of an English bubble in Spain because everyone were English players. That's where they sourced a lot of these guys that had maybe fallen out of the game at whatever level. So you got to learn the way of life, you learned the language a little bit, but you weren't necessarily chucked right into the deep end, which actually I think really helped us, and for me certainly helped me a few years after, when I ended up being kind of on my own out in countries in Europe. But it was a really good experience, and I'd really urge anyone that is ever thinking maybe giving it a go or trying it, just jump in and give it a go, because you'll be surprised where it may lead.
And like you said, after that you moved to the Belgian second division. You spent time in the Italian second division as well, and you mentioned there that you would encourage other footballers to do that, but how much have you learned from those spells abroad? Huge.
I mean, both on and off the field. It's quite cliche, but it's really true. Certainly in Italy, it was that was quite tough. No one really spoke the language. It was something where you kind of, just the smallest things, just picking up the details of training, not knowing that you can't pass back to the guy that's giving you the ball because that was the rule in that game, and people getting frustrated that you don't understand and not really taking the time to explain it sometimes was, but you kind of grew into it. And then after a few months, when you start picking up the language a little bit better and the culture and the way things are done, in that respect, you felt a lot more comfortable. In terms of the way they played, it was completely different to how football's approached here. I think sometimes, similar to Spain, it's dictated to by the climate. It was very hot in the summer. You can't just go running around pressing people all the time. Traditionally, they're a very defensive country in terms of their style of play when it comes to football there. So a lot of our training was based on keeping a clean sheet and working off the back of it. Very little emphasis was placed on players' size. It was all about your ability. So for being a bit gangly, a bit uncoordinated at times, it was I felt like I grew into it, and I certainly learned some parts of the game technically that I don't think I may have got playing in England. So that kind of exposed me to some things that at first were quite uncomfortable, but I felt became comfortable over time. When you look at your play now at Exeter City, one of the telling aspects is that work rate and that for you and closing down that you put up in the front. So it seems like you're quite a very adaptable player from the process that you've learned in many different countries. I guess so. Yeah, that's nice of you to say. I certainly feel like you can take aspects of any part of anyone's career where they've played and you learn from it. I feel, having been abroad and played for some teams that have different styles, you have to learn quick or you don't play. So I guess I've had the odd injury here and there, and I know what it's like to be injured, so I never take for granted being able to be playing competitive professional football. I think that comes out maybe in my desire to run, and hopefully in due course I'll be able to show more quality on the ball and be able to be, maybe get a reputation for nicking a few goals come the end of the season. Just touching on your time abroad as well and adopting to the cultures,
Can you speak good Spanish, Italian? Flemish doesn't.
I was quite lucky in Belgium because there were so many foreign players. The common language was English. Spain was a bit of a bubble in terms of quite a few English players, although you learned bits and bobs. Italian at the time I got quite good at, albeit in a terrible English style Italian accent. But I think I could hold my own in a very slow conversation, yeah.
You then returned to England and had a spell at Mansfield before going on trial here at Exeter City.
Yeah.
The move didn't come off at that point. How do you look back on that spell and that decision?
Having played Exeter that year, I knew roughly what they were about. I knew they had a really strong reputation, and I think it's a club that a lot of players would look at and go, that's the sort of team you'd want to play for. So when I heard there was an opportunity of a trial, I think at the time they had quite a few forwards already signed, so I knew the chances were quite slim, but just to be able to get your foot in the door was an opportunity I wanted to take, and had a good 2 or 3 weeks, and it was, with regret that I didn't quite get the deal at the time. I think if circumstances were different, you never know, but it made it a little bit easier, the transition this time round, because some of the faces are still the same, so you get to know people, and it was certainly a time that I really enjoyed.
You then went to Scotland via Torquay and had a really successful spell in Inverness Caledonian Thistle. What was it about the Scottish game that you think suited you?
I'm not too sure really. I guess I was lucky enough to get a good goal to game ratio when I was at Inverness at the back end of the season as well, which is kind of, I guess, when you want to try and produce your best football. But I don't think there was maybe any one particular thing that stood out. I think there was maybe just I was at the right place at the right time a few times, and the ball found me in positions where I feel very comfortable, and I was lucky enough to be able to put some of those chances away. And it was a time in my career I look back with real fondness, because some of those fixtures there are the sort of things you dream of playing as a kid, like really big stadiums, big crowds, live TV, and it's a Premier League of a strong footballing nation.
What can you recall of the games against the likes of maybe Rangers or Celtic, those matches?
I have one particular memory that stands out. Was when I first signed for Inverness, I broke my ankle in my first game, like 10 minutes into a sub appearance. So I was out for the next season. So I spent all of pre-season sort of getting stronger, had to bide my time for getting in the team, and then my first goal came in the last minute against Celtic. Not to win the game, that would be nice, but just to for a 2-2 draw, and I thought that was the culmination of sort of 9 months worth of graft that I don't think many people see. Certainly in an environment where if I wasn't playing football, it's not like you're made for life or anything like that. I had to. It was football in another job, and knowing that was on the line, it was very close to maybe coming to that at some stage. That I think it was the hard work I put in to get to that point. So that was a particular goal that I certainly look back and think that was. A lot of
relief and a lot of emotion.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gary Warren was there as well, so it's nice to share it with him.
I want to touch now to a kind of a crazy period, 24 hours in your football career, where you got the move from Motherwell to Yeovil on the morning of the Manchester United game. Just run us through the day and getting down to the third round.
Well, I'd previously spoken to Yeovil quite substantially the season before signing for Motherwell, so I had quite a strong relationship with the manager and the guys behind the scenes there. So it was no surprise to me that in that January window that there was always something kind of bubbling under the surface there. So when the opportunity came, that particular fixture as well, I think the stars kind of aligned, and I got the all clear on the morning to head down, and made it down for the game. And I was probably a little bit more nervous about meeting my own teammates and pre-match initiation songs than actually the fixture. But to get some, a good 35 odd minutes in that fixture against some of those guys was really something special.
And then you had your time at Yeovil, and in the summer moved to Exeter City. Did it always feel at some point you were going to sign for Exeter City, given the links it had through your career?
I guess not really until the conversations got to a point where you knew it was leading to something. I don't think in football you can kind of really say the way. I think a lot of things can be very unpredictable. A lot of things happen last minute. Sometimes they've been set up for a while. For me, when I heard that the manager was interested, I said straight away, absolutely, it's something I would like to further the conversations with.
You've had to bide your time to get a run of games in the first team here, and I just want to go back to that goal at Inverness. Did the goal at Cambridge have a similar sort of feel to it when you netted away there?
I think in its in its own right, yeah. I think it's hard for a forward when you haven't played that you want to try and get your first goal. I think the emotions were different because it's more relief, just get off the mark and then hopefully the rest come flowing. But I think the longer you go without scoring, sometimes you can build up an anxiety. So to kind of push that to one side once that had gone in, I think it was a mixture of excitement and a little bit of relief.
And you touched on Tuesday night about the competition for places being tough up front, and that spurring everybody on to keep the levels high in training and when you get your chances on the pitch.
Absolutely. I mean, you can't really afford to have a bad game, or as I think I said, rest on your laurels. It's not a possibility here, which I think is something the manager wants to create, and he has. So you've always got to be on your toes and take your chances when they come.